Hey everyone, welcome back to Citywide Bytes. I'm your host, Max Bowen. You may recall the song Wasted by Irish Millie being part of our recent Blackout Collection playlist. Well, for this episode, I'm talking with the artist for the full EP Between Then and Now, an amazing collection of music made during a very pivotal time of her life. We talk about the stories behind the songs, her many years in fiddle music, and she actually gives a wish list of some of the artists she'd like to work with in the future. We also get a preview of her soon to be released album, which is coming out later this year. Enjoy. All right, Millie. Well, first off, I just want to say thanks for joining us. I really appreciate this because I've been listening to your EP Between Then and Now several times and have just been like loving the music. So it's really cool that we get to talk all about that.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. So let us talk about the EP. This was released back in July, and I read that this covers like a space between two chapters in your life. And I'd like to ask about what those two chapters were, and what about this time of your life kind of inspired the music.
Yeah, of course. So I began writing those songs when I had started university, and it was definitely a big change from where I'd been before. I'd been living with my parents in a different city, going to school with different friends. So it was definitely a big change for me to go from, being like a young high school student to being somebody living in a really big city by themselves. And basically, I'm born in December, so I was still 17 when I moved out. So I was still underage. It was very like I felt like very like kind of alien, like alone. And I started writing this music, and a couple of the songs were written when I was in that high school era, but the majority of them were written when I had started university. I felt a little bit more alone, or maybe thinking about those memories that I had when I did live with my parents. Even though of course I go home on the weekends and it's not a huge deal, but just thinking about how some people may feel if they go away and they can't have access back home as easily as I did. And so I tried to make the songs quite relatable in that sense.
It can be very jarring to be like on your own for the first time in your life. It's like just you, mom and dad aren't there. So yeah, I can definitely see why this would be very inspirational to you from a creative standpoint. Were there any like particular, I guess, like topics of this part that kind of found its way into the music?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the songs is called Wasted, and it's about my mom actually. And it's kind of just the general message is, when you're in trouble, you have somebody who will always be there for you. They're not going to be upset with you, they're going to want you to be safe. And one of those times, when I got to university, I was like, oh, I have to be really careful because I'm pretty far away now, and like this is difficult. But I ended up writing that song in my dorm room. Um, and originally I didn't really know what it was about. And then as I got to the chorus and I started working through it, I was like, oh, this is about, my mom, because she would always come out and get me if I was ever in trouble. And I feel like that's definitely like that's a very universal feeling for
Oh
people
yeah.
my age. And a big part of the point of the EP was to make something that was for people who are my age, who are still going through a transitional period where they're going to feel things that feel like they aren't normal, and to say, hey, those things are normal, by the way, because everybody feels them, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. Um, what about the song Allison? Because that one is just a beautiful opener for this EP. I've listened to that one a million times. I'm curious as to the story behind that one.
Yeah, so right before I left for school in Toronto, my violin teacher passed away, and I had had her as a teacher for about 6 or 7 years, I think, when I was younger, and then I had another teacher, but this is the lady who gave me my start, and her name was Allison Sally Peary, and so I ended up writing a song, um, which was called Allison in the end, but at the beginning I didn't really know what it was called or what it was about. And it was just about going to this festival that I go to in the summer. Now, the reason I ended up calling it Allison is because I had thought, my violin teacher, she never went to this festival that I go to every year. But I thought about putting her in my shoes and how she would be. And, she loved writing music. She loved playing old time fiddle, which was something that I started out with. And so the catch line in Allison is your own jig because she would love to write her own music. And I ended up writing this song about her, but it's definitely less of a relatable song, and it's more of a like very personal story. But it is about putting her in my position, going to this festival, the Rollo Bay Fiddle Festival, actually in Surrey, PEI, and then seeing how she would have reacted in the same positions that I was in. There, playing on stages, jamming in a tuning room, all of these things, and rolling down the big country hill, all of those things, in barn dances, stuff like that. And it was more like a tribute to her, if that makes sense.
It does, and then I'm really sorry about to hear about this, but I'd like to ask about how you and Allison first connected and kind of what made the teacher student relationship work so well.
Yeah, so it was interesting because when I started playing and I wanted to play, there was only one teacher in Peterborough, and that was Allison. And so my dad ended up, doing a bunch of research and taking me to her. And I think that we definitely could have had times where we didn't click, but the thing that clicked with me for her as my teacher was more so the fact that she was not, um, you know, constrictive of my creativity. And that was something very difficult in old time fiddle music because old time fiddle music has a lot of rules. So I was very, I was that kid who would get up and dance when she would give me demonstrations kind of thing. But she could have easily, been upset with me but she was very, very kind of happy, and even though she kind of gave off this very strict demeanor, when people would meet her, she was very, very supportive of that and, kind of fostered a really great environment for me.
Okay, what about fiddle music draws you into it so much? There's so many things that you could play.
Yeah, so I mean, when I first heard fiddle, I was 3, and I was just very fascinated at the fact that, it was something I'd never seen before, and, also the fact, I guess, that it made such a beautiful noise, because the person playing it was Natalie McMaster, so of course it made a beautiful noise.
Yes,
And
yeah.
so I really wanted to do that. Like, I wanted to do it like she did, I guess. And when I started playing, it was hard because it sounded terrible, of course. And yeah, I remember being really drawn into folk music because of mainly the community around it. When my
Mhm.
parents started taking me traveling down the east coast of Canada, I was able to kind of, see this community of dance and culture and, kindness and inclusivity and all these things. So the music itself became that much better, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. All right, I want to ask a bit about Natalie McMaster. For those who aren't familiar with her work, tell me a bit about her.
Yeah, so I mean, Natalie McMaster is like Canadian renowned fiddle player. She has the Order of Canada. Like she's won so many awards. She's just fantastic. Has many, many records. And she is a Cape Breton fiddler. So the reason that I love her music so much is because when I started traveling down east, I started hearing this Cape Breton music and then hearing her play it, and she's like the best Cape Breton fiddler. So of course I wanted to be like her because she was just fantastic. And I love Cape Breton music so much. But she's like my idol for sure.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned wasted earlier on, and one things I read about this that I want to ask about was that you also work with your professor and your father on this track. That sounds like a lot of fun. Tell me a bit about just like what it was like working with the two of them.
Yeah, so in first year university, we had an assignment at school where we had to write a song, mix, master, produce the whole thing, record the whole thing, kind of deal. But of course, the professors knew we had limited equipment, and my equipment included a MIDI keyboard and my microphone that was attached to my computer. So my mix was going to sound, not very professional, but I was a big dreamer and decided to do like this whole song with orchestral arrangement, stuff like that. Of course, all the stuff you hear in Wasted with the violins and the double vocals and the guitar and the piano and everything like that. And so I ended up using my MIDI instrumental off for it, and I also just ended up recording my vocals into the computer, and I submitted the song. And about a week later, I got a message on Facebook from my professor, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting. I haven't, class is over, whatever." And I ended up hearing from him, and he said, "I really want to make this track something that you can release because I really love it." And I was like, "Oh, this is really nice." I mean, I was listening to the song and I loved it so much. It's like my favorite song I've ever written. Even though I know it's not the most popular song I've ever written, it has to be like my favorite song. And I was listening to the track like basically every day because I was like proud of myself that I'd created this, I guess. And and then I got this message and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, sure." So I ended up booking in with him, and as we started to move through, he ended up recording a piano part. We ended up keeping a lot of the original content because it was, true to me being in that dorm room, me writing it, the storyline, it made sense with the song. And my dad ended up recording guitar parts in Peterborough and sending them up to us in Toronto, which he has done for most of my music anyways at this point. Um but yeah, we ended up recording it and then releasing it, and it was definitely something different than I've ever done, for sure.
Mm. When it comes to collaborations, are there any artists that you think, oh yes, someday I would love to like work with them?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm kind of getting into the side of pop music now, like folk pop. There's a little bit of rock influence on my new record that's going to be coming out before the summer, um, and so I would love it if I could collaborate with some cool country bands. One of my favorite country bands is Coetzel. I love Chris Stapleton. He's a phenomenal vocalist. But then also people like the Rascal Flats. You have those
Mm.
dreams in your mind. You just love those people. And then, of course, people like Natalie McMaster and Talisk, a folk band, and Irish band, stuff like that, that would make a huge difference. And one of my favorite kind of folky pop artists is Noah Kahn.
Mm.
Writes phenomenal music. Would be great to do a collaboration with somebody like that and be able to, have vocals on something. Yeah.
I love that you're listening to all of these like top tier artists. That's so cool to have those dreams, and you never know. One of them might be checking this podcast out. Might think, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna go work with her. Now, I also read that you are studying music industry and technology at the University of Toronto. How does what you learned there kind of factor into your career as a musician?
Yeah, so specifically this semester, it's a joint program with Centennial College, and so I'm more downtown in Toronto studying at Centennial for this semester, and we're kind of in a studio, and it's very helpful for when I record my records. I'm learning how to use digital interfaces, how to use compressors, how to use all those things, mix, master, edit, record, microphone, stuff like that. And it's very helpful for when I go to record my music, but I think it will also be really helpful for the future when I want to, make my own music and record and produce my own music. It'll be great. But right now, it's helping me a lot with, existing in a studio. I'm getting a lot more experience that way.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I think as someone who does work with a lot of like tech stuff too, the tech thing is the hardest part to learn. The tech and the software, and like, and you have all these new gizmos coming out. They think, do I actually need this thing? But it sounds like awesome. Maybe I should get it anyway.
Yes, exactly. It's definitely a game changer for me.
Hmm. Now, you have done a lot since you began your career in music, which is only about a few years ago, which is really amazing. You are just to list a few of your accolades. You are a seven-time Canadian Folk Music Award nominee. You got two awards this year for Young Performer of the Year and Single of the Year for your song "You Were There." You performed for crowds of 10,000 people and earned the praise of a number of musicians, including Natalie McMaster. So, in terms of goals, like what else do you hope to accomplish?
I want to be able to record and produce my own records. And of course, with the record that I'm working on right now, I would love it if I could branch out to more genres. Like I'm trying more pop and, all these things that are kind of, really out there for, I guess, a fiddle player, and keep going with my touring, and travel more and see more of the world and share my music. And I'd love to also reach a wider audience for sure.
One of the things that I really like about fiddle music is it can go with everything. It is just like universal in that way. Like I've seen fiddle players with like country bands, with pop bands, with metal bands. It seems to go with everything, really.
It does, it really does, and you'd be surprised at the amount of bands that I've played with that are totally different from one another.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's like, you know what this band needs? A fiddle player every time.
Exactly.
So, Millie, we are coming down to the end of this conversation, but you mentioned it a couple times, so we have to talk about it. What's this new album you're working on?
So, this new album is kind of a concept album for, you know, the next chapter of my life, if you will, because we had Between Then and Now, and this new album is there's 7 tracks on it, similar to my last album, Grace, and a lot of the songs are also about very relatable things, but definitely more reaching adulthood kind of things and less, learning kind of things. Um, there's some songs on there that are a little bit more, tragic and sad, but then there's also songs that are really, really uplifting and quite exciting, and then some that are very, you know, chill and mellow. And so I'm trying to, record music that's going to fit well together on a record, but also be very different so that people can listen, at different times when they feel different things. And then also my goal is to just branch out in genre.
I like that. I love those goals. All right. Well, we also have to talk about shows because you have a number of performances coming up on your website. I see on Thursday, April 9th, you're going to be at the Canadian Folk Music Awards. On the 18th of the same month, you'll be at a fundraiser for the Norwood Hospice, and this is all in the Alberta, Ontario area. You got a lot of other shows coming up here. So, do you do all your own like booking?
I do have a publicist and I have a manager now,
Nice.
but it was never like that, in the beginning. I used to book my own shows and yeah, it's a lot of work to get that many shows, but I'm very grateful for the people who work with me for my music for sure.
And that's a good reminder. We need to give a shout out to the one only Eric Alper. He's the one who helped put all this together. Eric's been great to work with. So, Eric, you're awesome, man. Appreciate the work. And to wrap all of this up, folks, we've given you the full story. Now, here's what you do you go to irishmillie.ca. Everything is there. Get your copy of Between Then and Now. Get your copy of Grace. Listen to all the music there. And there's merch too. Get the merch. And certainly follow her on the various socials, Spotify. And certainly, Millie, looking forward to our next conversation because I want to hear the new album.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to our next conversation as well when we can discuss the new record.
You got it. And to the folks at home, thank you once again for checking the show out. This has been Citywide Bytes. I'm your host, Max Bowen, and I'll see you all next time.